I woke up Tuesday morning to the sound of heavy machinery tearing up my back field, and when I looked out the window, my coffee mug nearly slipped from my hand. There, on my 5-acre property in rural Kansas, about 20 feet from my fence line, was a full construction crew installing what appeared to be a massive basketball court with LED lights, bleachers, and everything. I am Robert Olson, and I have lived on this property just outside of Lawrence, Kansas for the past 8 years. When I bought this place, it was specifically because I wanted land. I wanted space. I wanted to be away from the suburbs where I grew up, where every little thing you did was scrutinized by neighbors who had nothing better to do than measure your grass height with a ruler. The property I bought was technically within the boundaries of the Meadowbrook HOA, but when I purchased it, the realtor assured me that the HOA was dormant. The houses nearby were all on larger lots, most people kept to themselves, and there had not been a single HOA meeting in over a decade. The yearly dues were $25, basically nothing, and supposedly just covered the maintenance of a small entrance sign at the main road. I paid it every year without thinking twice about it. I threw on my boots and stormed outside, my heart pounding in my chest. The morning air was crisp, typical for early March in Kansas, and I could see my breath as I marched across my field. The construction crew had already laid down what looked like a concrete foundation, and workers were moving around with purpose, unloading materials from trucks. "Hey!" I shouted, approaching the nearest worker. "What the hell is going on here?" "This is my property," the worker, a young guy probably in his 20s, looked up from his clipboard. "You will need to talk to the supervisor, sir. I just work here." "Then get me your supervisor," I said, trying to keep my voice level. He pointed to a woman in a hard hat standing near a white pickup truck. I walked over, my boots squelching in the mud that their equipment had already created in my field. "Excuse me," I said, approaching her. "I am the owner of this property. Why are you building on my land without my permission?" The woman turned around and I could see her name tag read Michelle. She looked at me with a polite but dismissive smile. "This is not your land, sir. This is HOA common area." "The hell it is," I shot back. "I have the deed to this property. This is 5 acres, all of which I own." Michelle pulled out a folded document from her truck. "According to the HOA covenant, any land within 50 feet of the property line adjacent to the designated community space is subject to HOA use for community improvement projects. This was voted on and approved at last month's meeting." "What meeting?" I demanded. "I did not get any notice about a meeting, and that is not how property law works. You cannot just claim someone's land." "The notices were sent to all HOA members via email and posted on the community Facebook page," Michelle said, her tone suggesting she had dealt with complaints before and found them tedious. "If you did not receive it, you should update your contact information with the HOA board." "I do not have Facebook," I said. "And what email?" "I have never given the HOA my email address," Michelle shrugged. "That is something you will need to take up with the HOA president. We have our permits and approval. We are just doing the job we were hired for." I felt my face getting hot despite the cool morning air. "Get off my property. Right now, all of you." Michelle's expression hardened. "Sir, if you interfere with this construction, you will be in violation of HOA regulations and subject to fines. I suggest you contact the HOA board if you have concerns." She turned her back to me and started talking into a radio. I stood there for a moment, furious and feeling completely blindsided. I pulled out my phone and started searching through my email for anything from the HOA. Nothing. I checked my spam folder. Nothing. I went through my physical mail from the past few months, Just the yearly dues notice, which I had paid in January like always. I went back inside and immediately called my lawyer, Tom Richardson. I had used him for the property purchase and a few other matters over the years. He was semi-retired now, but still took calls from longtime clients. "Tom, I need your help," I said as soon as he picked up. "The HOA is building something on my property without permission." Tom listened as I explained the situation. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Robert, send me your property deed and any HOA documents you have. I need to look at the exact language. But I have to tell you, some of these HOA covenants have some pretty aggressive clauses." "Did you read through the whole thing when you bought the place?" "Honestly, Tom, you know I did not. It was a dormant HOA. Nobody cared about it." "Well, somebody cares now," Tom said. "Give me a few hours to review everything. In the meantime, do not do anything that could be construed as assault or property destruction. If they have permits, even if those permits are bogus, you need to go through proper channels." I spent the rest of the morning scanning and emailing documents to Tom while the construction continued outside my window. The sound of machinery was like nails on a chalkboard. I tried to do some work. I am a freelance software developer, but I could not concentrate. I kept looking out the window, watching these people tear up my field. Around noon, a silver SUV pulled up my driveway. I watched from the window as a woman got out. She was probably in her late 40s, with short blonde hair styled in that specific way that screamed, "I want to speak to your manager." She wore pressed khakis and a blazer, completely overdressed for a construction site. I opened the door before she could knock. "Mr. Olson," she said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "I am Patricia Kendall, president of the Meadowbrook HOA. I understand there has been some confusion about our community basketball court project." "There is no confusion," I said. "You are building on my property without permission. That is called trespassing." Patricia's smile remained fixed. "Mr. Olson, may I come in? I think we can clear this up very easily." Against my better judgment, I let her in. We sat at my kitchen table, and she pulled out a folder with documents. "As you know, when you purchased this property, you agreed to the HOA covenants," Patricia began, sliding a document toward me. It was a copy of the HOA rules, much thicker than the simple 2-page document I remembered from the closing. "This is not what I signed," I said immediately. "These are the updated covenants," Patricia said. "They were ratified at our annual meeting 3 years ago." I was not at any meeting 3 years ago. I did not even know there were meetings happening. "The notices were sent to all members," Patricia said. She had clearly prepared these talking points. "Per the original covenant, which you did sign, amendments can be made with a majority vote of attending members at any official meeting, provided proper notice is given." "What was the vote?" I asked. "How many people showed up to this meeting?" Patricia hesitated for just a moment. "We had 7 members present. The vote was unanimous." 7 people, I repeated. "There are over 50 properties in this HOA and 7 people voted to change the rules. 7 people who cared enough to attend and participate in their community," Patricia said, her voice taking on a sharp edge. "If other members cannot be bothered to engage with the HOA, they forfeit their right to complain about decisions." "That is not how property rights work," I said. "You cannot vote to take someone's land." "We are not taking your land, Mr. Olson. We are utilizing community space as defined in the covenant. Your property line is here." She pointed to a spot on a map she had brought. "And the basketball court is being built here, on HOA common area." "That is my field," I said, pointing to the same spot. "I mow that grass. I have been maintaining that land for 8 years. Maintenance of community areas by individual members does not transfer ownership, Patricia said. Many members maintain areas beyond their property lines out of community spirit. That does not make those areas their private property. I stared at her, realizing that she genuinely believed she was in the right. Or at least, she was committed to acting like she believed it. I am contacting my lawyer, I said, and I want that construction stopped immediately. Patricia stood up, gathering her papers. You are certainly welcome to consult with legal counsel. However, I should inform you that any legal action against the HOA will result in you being responsible for both your legal fees and the HOA's legal fees when we prevail. That is specified in Section 12 of the Covenant. Additionally, interfering with approved HOA projects carries a fine of $500 per day. She left before I could respond, her SUV kicking up gravel as she drove away. I called Tom immediately. They are claiming they amended the covenants and that this is common area, not my property. Tom, I have been paying taxes on this land. I have the deed. I am still reviewing everything, Tom said. But Robert, I am going to be straight with you. This is going to be expensive to fight and the outcome is not guaranteed. Some states have very strong HOA laws that give associations a lot of power. Kansas is actually one of them. So what am I supposed to do? Just let them build whatever they want on my property? I am not saying that. I am saying we need to be strategic. Give me until tomorrow morning. I am calling in a favor from a colleague who specializes in property law. We will figure out exactly where you stand legally. That night, I barely slept. The construction crew had left around 5, but they had accomplished a lot in one day. The foundation was poured, and they had started putting up the posts for what I assumed would be fencing around the court. Wednesday morning, Tom called me at 7. Okay, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that based on your deed and the property survey, that land is definitely yours. The HOA covenant does have language about common areas, but it specifically defines those areas, and your back field is not included. The amended covenant they are referencing was never properly filed with the county, which means it is not legally binding. That is great, I said, feeling relief flood through me. So I can make them stop. That is where the bad news comes in. To get a court order stopping construction, we need to file an emergency injunction. That requires going before a judge, and the earliest I can get a hearing is next Monday. Even then, it is not guaranteed. The HOA will argue that stopping construction will cost them money and that the dispute can be resolved after the project is finished. So I just have to watch them build on my property for almost a week. Unless you have another option, Tom said. But Robert, I am serious. Do not do anything illegal. Do not damage their equipment. Do not threaten anyone. That will only hurt your case. I thanked Tom and hung up. I sat at my kitchen table, drinking coffee and watching the construction crew arrive. They were early, pulling in around 7:30 with more equipment and materials. I spent Wednesday feeling helpless. I tried to work, tried to distract myself, but every sound from outside pulled my attention back to what was happening. By the end of the day, they had made even more progress. The fencing was up, and they had started on the actual court surface. That evening, I walked out to look at what they had done. It was surreal, seeing this basketball court taking shape in the middle of my field. The field where I had planned to maybe get some chickens next year, where I sometimes sat in a lawn chair on summer evenings, where I had enjoyed having open space. I noticed that the construction had torn up a much larger area than just where the court was. Their trucks had driven all over, creating deep ruts in the grass. They had dumped some excess concrete at the edge, killing a patch of wildflowers that came up every spring. Thursday morning, Patricia showed up again. "Mr. Olson," she called from her SUV window, not bothering to get out. "I wanted to let you know that we have received a complaint about your fence. It appears to be 6 inches taller than the maximum height allowed in the HOA covenant. You will need to have it lowered within 30 days or face fines." I walked toward her vehicle. "My fence has been this height for 8 years. The covenant specifies a maximum height of 6 feet. Your fence appears to be 6.5 feet. We will need you to comply with community standards. Patricia, you cannot seriously be doing this right now. HOA regulations apply to all members equally, Mr. Olson. I would hate to see you rack up unnecessary fines." She drove off before I could respond. I went back inside and called Tom. "They are retaliating. She just told me my fence is too tall, a fence that has been here since before I bought the place." "Document everything," Tom said. "Every interaction, every complaint. If this goes to court, a pattern of harassment will help your case. How is the construction coming?" "They are moving fast. At this rate, they will be done before Monday." "That is what they are counting on," Tom said. "They want to present the judge with a finished project. It is a lot harder to order something torn down than to stop it from being built." Friday morning, I woke up to find the basketball court was nearly complete. They had worked late Thursday night. I could hear them until almost 9. The court was paved, the baskets were up, and they were installing lighting. I felt sick looking at it. This beautiful field, this open space that I had bought specifically for peace and privacy, now had a basketball court with glaring LED lights that would shine right into my bedroom window. That afternoon, I went into town to clear my head. I stopped at the hardware store, Benson's Hardware on Massachusetts Street in Lawrence, a place I had been shopping at for years. I ran into my neighbor, Mike Torres, who lived about a quarter mile down the road. "Hey, Robert," Mike said. "I heard about the basketball court situation." "That is messed up. You are in the HOA too, right?" I asked. "Did you know they were planning this?" Mike shook his head. "I had no idea. I got some notice a few months back about a meeting, but it was sent to an old email address I do not use anymore. I only found out about the basketball court when I drove past your place yesterday. Patricia never said anything about it being built on someone's property." "Did you vote on any amendments to the covenant?" I asked. "No, never. I have lived here for 12 years, and I have never been to a single HOA meeting. Until Patricia took over as president last year, I do not think there were any meetings. This was interesting. Patricia has only been president for a year. Yeah, she moved into the Johnson place when old Mrs. Johnson went to a nursing home. Patricia bought the house from the family. Within a few months, she had revived the HOA and started sending out all these notices and rules. I thanked Mike and continued my errands, but my mind was working. Patricia had moved in, taken over a dormant HOA, and immediately started expanding its power. The amended covenant, the basketball court, all of this had happened under her leadership. When I got home, I did some research. I found the Meadowbrook HOA Facebook page that Patricia had mentioned. It had been created 13 months ago. The posts were all from Patricia, announcing meetings, discussing projects, posting about covenant violations. There were maybe a dozen members in the group, out of 50-plus properties in the HOA. I looked up the meeting minutes that were posted. The meeting where the covenant was allegedly amended had 7 people present, just like Patricia said. But as I read through the minutes, I noticed something. The amended language about common areas was vague, referencing areas designated for community use as determined by the board. There was no specific map, no clear boundaries. I called Tom. "I found the meeting minutes online. The amendment language is incredibly vague. There is no way this would hold up in court, right? Probably not, but that is not the point, Tom said. The point is to intimidate you. Most people do not want to go to court. Most people just accept what the HOA says because fighting it is expensive and stressful. Patricia is counting on you backing down. Well, she does not know me very well, I said. Saturday morning, the construction crew was back, doing finishing touches. They installed benches, painted lines on the court, and put up a sign that read Meadowbrook Community Basketball Court HOA members only. I took photos of everything. I documented the damage to my field, the ruts from the trucks, the area they had torn up that was far beyond just the court itself. I measured the distance from my property line to the court. It was entirely within what my deed specified as my property. That afternoon, Patricia showed up with 2 other people, a man and a woman, both probably in their 50s. "Mr. Olson," Patricia called out. I went outside to meet them. "I wanted to introduce you to some of your neighbors who are excited about the new basketball court. This is Donald Marsh and Karen Wheeler. They both serve on the HOA board with me." Karen stepped forward with a bright smile. "We are so thrilled about this addition to our community. It will be wonderful for property values." "It is built on my property," I said flatly. Karen's smile faltered a bit, but Patricia jumped in. "Mr. Olson, we have been through this. The court is on community land. Now we wanted to discuss another matter. There have been complaints about noise from your property." "What noise?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Apparently, you have been running power tools at inappropriate hours," Donald said. He had a nasal voice that immediately irritated me. "I am a software developer. I work from home on a computer. I do not use power tools." "Well, we have received complaints," Patricia said. "So we wanted to give you a warning. Excessive noise between the hours of 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. is prohibited." It was clear what they were doing. They were building a paper trail of violations to make me look like a problem resident if this went to court. "I will be sure to keep my keyboard typing to a minimum," I said sarcastically. Karen frowned. "Mr. Olson, there is no need for hostility. We are all part of a community here. Communities have rules. Communities also have property rights," I said. "And I will see you all in court on Monday." After they left, I was angrier than I had been all week. The smugness, the casual way they acted like what they were doing was completely reasonable. It was infuriating. I called my brother David, who lived in Kansas City. I needed to vent to someone who would understand. "Let me get this straight," David said after I explained everything. "They built a basketball court on your property and they think that is legal. According to them, it is community property. According to my deed, it is my property. So what happens Monday? We go before a judge and request an injunction. Tom thinks we have a good case, but even if we win, getting them to tear it down is another battle." "Man, this is why I rent," David said. "HOAs are insane." Sunday, the construction crew did not come back. The basketball court was finished. It looked professional, I had to admit. If it were in an actual park, it would be a nice facility. But it was not in a park. It was on my property. I spent Sunday preparing for court, gathering all my documents, printing out photos, organizing everything chronologically. Tom had sent over a draft of our argument, and I reviewed it multiple times. That evening, I walked out to look at the court one more time. The LED lights were on, apparently on a timer. They were bright, casting harsh white light across my property. I could see them clearly from my bedroom window. There was no way I would be able to sleep with those lights on every night. I stood there in my field, looking at this basketball court, and something in me snapped. Not in an angry way, but in a clarity way. These people had come onto my property, torn up my land, built something without permission, and acted like they had every right to do it. and I was supposed to politely wait for the courts to maybe possibly eventually do something about it. I went to bed that night with a plan forming in my mind. It was probably not a good plan. It was probably not a legal plan. But it was a plan that felt right. Monday morning, I got up at 4 a.m. I got dressed, went out to my barn, and fired up my tractor. I have a John Deere 5075E, a good solid utility tractor that I used for maintaining my property. Attached to it was a heavy-duty plow that I had used a couple times to break up some hard ground when I first moved in. The sky was just starting to lighten as I drove the tractor across my field toward the basketball court. The LED lights were still on, illuminating the pristine court surface. I lowered the plow and drove straight onto the court. The sound of the plow tearing into the asphalt was incredibly satisfying. The plow ripped through the surface, breaking it up and pushing it aside. I made one pass, then another, then another. I plowed up the entire court, turning it into churned earth and broken chunks of asphalt. The fence posts came down easily when I drove into them with the tractor. The baskets bent and fell. The benches got pushed aside. Within an hour, the basketball court was gone, replaced by plowed earth, but I was not done. I went back to the barn and got bags of seed corn that I had bought months ago. I had been thinking about planting some corn this year, just a small amount, mostly for the experience of growing something. I had bought the seed but had not gotten around to planting yet. Now seemed like the perfect time. I spent the next 2 hours planting corn over the entire area where the basketball court had been. I used the tractor to create furrows, dropped the seeds, and covered them. By the time I was finished, there was no sign of the basketball court except for piles of broken asphalt and bent metal that I dragged to the edge of my property. The sun was fully up now, and I could see a car coming down the road toward my house. It was Tom's car. He pulled into the driveway and got out, staring at what I had done. "Robert," he said slowly, "please tell me you did not just destroy HOA property." "I destroyed a structure that was illegally built on my property," I said, "and then I planted corn. It is my land. I can plant what I want." Tom rubbed his face with both hands. Okay, we need to get to the courthouse. The hearing is in an hour. We will deal with this after." "There is nothing to deal with," I said. "They trespassed and built on my property. I removed the trespass." "Robert, it does not work that way. You cannot just take the law into your own hands." "Apparently they can," I said. "What is good for the goose is good for the gander." We drove separately to the courthouse in Lawrence. I could see Tom was stressed, probably running through all the ways this could go wrong. I felt calm, though. For the first time in a week, I felt like I had some control over the situation. The hearing was in front of Judge Martin Collins, an older man who had a reputation for being fair but strict. Patricia was there with a lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit. Karen and Donald were there too, sitting behind Patricia. Our case was called and we stood before the judge. Tom presented our argument first, showing the property deed, the survey, the original HOA covenant, and explaining that the amended covenant was never properly filed. Patricia's lawyer, who introduced herself as Jennifer Stone, argued that the construction was on community property as defined by the HOA board, that proper notice had been given, and that Mr. Olson was simply a disgruntled resident who did not want to participate in community improvements. Judge Collins listened to both sides, reviewed the documents, and then looked up. "Before I rule on the injunction, I understand there have been some developments this morning." "Miss Stone," Jennifer stood up. "Yes, Your Honor." Early this morning, Mr. Olson destroyed the basketball court using heavy equipment. The HOA estimates damages at over $50,000. We are filing a separate civil suit, But we wanted to bring this to the court's attention as it shows a pattern of aggressive and illegal behavior. Judge Collins looked at me. "Mr. Olson, did you destroy the basketball court this morning?" I stood up. "Your Honor, I removed a structure that was illegally built on my property without my permission. After removing it, I planted corn on my own land." "That was not your property to modify," Jennifer said. "Regardless of the property line dispute, you cannot destroy someone else's construction project." "It was not their property to build on," I countered. Judge Collins held up a hand. "I am going to review these property documents more carefully. We are taking a 30-minute recess." We all sat down, and Tom leaned over to whisper to me, "You could not have waited literally 3 more hours. If I had waited, the court would be arguing about tearing down a finished court. Now, the court is arguing about who owns land. Much simpler." Tom looked like he wanted to argue, but he just shook his head. When Judge Collins returned, he did not sit down. "I have reviewed the property deed, the survey, the original HOA covenant, and the amended covenant that was provided. Here is my ruling. The property deed clearly shows that the land in question belongs to Mr. Olson. The HOA covenant, both original and amended, does not give the HOA authority to build on private property without the owner's consent. The amended covenant, even if it were properly filed, which it was not, cannot override property law." He looked at Patricia and her lawyer. "The basketball court was built illegally on Mr. Olson's private property. While I do not condone taking the law into your own hands, Mr. Olson was within his rights to remove a structure from his own property. The HOA's request for damages is denied." Patricia stood up, her face red. "Your Honor, this is outrageous. The community needs that basketball court. We spent thousands of dollars." "Then you should have built it on property you actually own," Judge Collins said firmly. "This case is dismissed. The HOA is ordered to remove any remaining materials from Mr. Olson's property within 7 days." We left the courthouse, and I could hear Patricia arguing loudly with her lawyer in the hallway. Tom and I walked to our cars. "You got lucky," Tom said. "That could have gone very differently." "Maybe," I said, "but it did not." I drove home feeling vindicated. The corn I had planted that morning was exactly where I wanted it. My property was my property, and everyone involved now knew that. But of course, that was not the end of it. It is never that simple with HOAs. 2 days later, I received a notice from the HOA. It was a fine for $500 per day for the week that the basketball court was destroyed, totaling $3,500. It also included a fine for unauthorized agricultural use of my property, claiming that planting corn violated the HOA's landscaping standards. I called Tom. "They are still trying to find me, even after the judge ruled in my favor." "Do not pay it," Tom said. "If they try to put a lien on your property, we will fight it. They are grasping at straws." The notices kept coming. Every few days there was a new violation. My grass was too long. My grass was too short. I had a vehicle parked in my driveway for more than 24 hours, something about commercial vehicles, even though it was my personal truck. I had not brought in my trash cans within 12 hours of trash pickup. I documented everything and forwarded it all to Tom. "This is harassment," Tom said. "Clear, obvious harassment. If they keep this up, we can file a restraining order." The corn I had planted started to sprout about 2 weeks after I put it in the ground. Little green shoots coming up in neat rows where the basketball court used to be. Every time I looked at it, I felt a sense of satisfaction. Patricia drove by my house at least once a day. Sometimes she would slow down and stare at the cornfield. Sometimes she would take pictures. I am sure she was documenting everything, probably planning some new angle of attack. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after the court ruling, a different car pulled into my driveway. It was a county official, a building inspector. "Mr. Olson," he said when I came outside, "I am here to inspect your property. We received a complaint about unpermitted structures." "What structures?" I asked. "A barn, a shed, and fencing," he said, reading from a clipboard. "Those were all here when I bought the property 8 years ago. They are grandfathered in. I still need to inspect them to verify they meet current code." I let him inspect everything. It took 2 hours. He measured, took photos, checked foundations. Finally, he came back to his car. "Everything looks fine," he said. "The structures are all grandfathered, like you said." "But I have to ask who filed the complaint." "I can guess," I said. "Would it happen to be the HOA president?" He glanced at his clipboard. "I cannot confirm that, but the complaint came from a Patricia Kendall, listing herself as president of Meadowbrook HOA. Of course it did." After he left, I was done playing defense. It was time to push back. I started researching HOA law in Kansas. I found that HOAs are required to file certain documents with the county, including annual reports, financial statements, and meeting minutes. I requested copies of all documents for the Meadowbrook HOA from the county clerk. What I found was interesting. The HOA had not filed annual reports for over a decade, which technically put them in violation of state law. Patricia had filed one report after she became president, but it was incomplete and missing required financial information. More importantly, the meeting where the covenant was amended did not meet the legal requirements for a valid vote. Kansas law requires that for a vote on covenant amendments, you need either a majority of all members, not just attending members, or you need to follow specific notice requirements, including certified mail to all members. Patricia had sent emails to some people and posted on Facebook. That was not legal notice. I compiled all of this information and sent it to Tom. "Can we use this?" "Absolutely," Tom said. "This is good work. The amended covenant is definitely invalid, but more than that, the HOA might not be in good standing with the state. If they are not in compliance with filing requirements, they do not have legal authority to enforce any rules. So what do? We file a motion to have the HOA declared invalid due to failure to comply with state regulations. If that succeeds, they have no authority over you at all." We filed the motion the next day. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. During those 3 weeks, the harassment from Patricia escalated. She filed a complaint with the county about my corn, claiming it was a fire hazard. The county sent someone out, looked at my corn, which was now about 2 feet tall and doing well, and laughed. "Madam, corn is not a fire hazard when it is growing. It is mostly water." She filed a complaint about my mailbox, saying it was too close to the road. The Postal Service came out, measured, and confirmed my mailbox was exactly where it should be. She filed a complaint with the sheriff's office, claiming I was operating a commercial farming operation without proper zoning. A deputy came out, looked at my small cornfield, and told me, "Mr. Olson, I grew up on a farm. What you have here is not a commercial operation. It is maybe a 1/4 acre of corn. That is a garden, not a farm." Each frivolous complaint made Patricia look worse. Each dismissed complaint was documented by Tom. Karen and Donald stopped by one afternoon. Karen got out of her car but stayed near the road. "Mr. Olson," Karen called out, "we wanted to talk to you about resolving this situation." I walked down from my house. "What situation?" "This dispute with the HOA," Donald said. "It is creating negativity in our community. Patricia thinks if we could find a compromise, we could all move forward." "What kind of compromise?" I asked. "What if the HOA built a new basketball court on actual community land, and in exchange, you drop your legal action and pay a reduced fine for destroying the original court, Karen said. No, I said simply. Mr. Olson, please be reasonable, Karen said. We are trying to meet you halfway. You want me to pay a fine for removing an illegal structure from my own property. That is not halfway. That is not even close to reasonable. Donald stepped forward. You need to understand, Patricia is not going to give up. She will keep filing complaints, keep pursuing this. She does not like to lose. Then she should not have started a fight she could not win, I said. I am not paying any fines. I am not compromising. You built on my property illegally. That is the end of the story. They left, and I could see Karen on her phone immediately, probably calling Patricia. The hearing arrived. Tom and I presented our case, showing that the HOA had failed to file required documents, that the covenant amendment was invalid due to improper notice, and that the HOA had engaged in a pattern of harassment. Patricia's lawyer argued that these were minor administrative issues that did not affect the HOA's authority. She presented the HOA as a well-meaning community organization being attacked by one angry member. Judge Collins, the same judge from before, reviewed everything carefully. I am troubled by several things here, he said. First, the HOA has clearly failed to meet state filing requirements for over a decade. Ms. Stone, your client cannot claim to be a legitimate governing organization while ignoring state law. Your Honor, they are correcting those oversights, Jennifer said. But they did not correct them before taking aggressive action against Mr. Olson, the judge said. Second, the amended covenant is clearly invalid. The notice requirements were not met. Third, and most concerning, is the pattern of behavior shown by the HOA leadership. The court has reviewed the list of complaints and violations issued to Mr. Olson over the past 6 weeks. It is extensive and, frankly, appears to be retaliatory. He looked at Patricia directly. Miss Kendall, your HOA has no legal authority over Mr. Olson because it is not in compliance with state law. Even if it were, you overstepped your authority significantly. The court finds in favor of Mr. Olson. All fines issued to him are voided. The HOA is ordered to cease and desist from any further harassment, including frivolous complaints to county officials. Patricia stood up, her face flushed. This is ridiculous. I have spent months trying to improve our community, and this is how I am treated. You built on someone's property without permission, Judge Collins said firmly. You ignored state law regarding HOA governance. You have engaged in harassment. If you want to improve your community, I suggest you start by following the law. We left the courthouse, and this time, I felt like it was really over. Tom seemed relieved too. That should be the end of it, Tom said. If she tries anything else, we can file for a restraining order and potentially sue for harassment. I went home and looked at my cornfield. It was thriving, the stalks now over 3 feet tall and growing fast. It was satisfying in a way that was hard to explain. This was my land, and I was using it how I wanted to use it, but I underestimated Patricia's determination. About a week after the hearing, I woke up to find someone had driven through my cornfield in the night, destroying about half of what I had planted. Tire tracks went through it in deliberate patterns, clearly trying to do maximum damage. I called the sheriff immediately. A deputy came out, took photos, and wrote a report. Do you know who might have done this? He asked. I have a pretty good idea, I said. I told him about the HOA situation, the court cases, everything. We will investigate, he said. But unless you have direct evidence, like security camera footage, it is hard to prove who did it. I did not have security cameras. I had never needed them before. I had always felt safe on my property. That afternoon, I drove into town and bought a complete security system. 4 cameras covering different angles of my property, motion sensors, the works. I spent the rest of the day installing everything. That night, around 2 a.m., the motion sensors went off. I checked the camera feed on my phone and saw a car slowly driving past my house. It did not stop, just went by slowly. I could not see the driver clearly in the dark. The car made another pass an hour later. Then another one at 4 a.m. I did not sleep much that night. In the morning, I reviewed all the footage. The car was a silver SUV, Patricia's car. I sent the footage to Tom and to the sheriff's department. "This is harassment," Tom said when he called. "We have her on camera repeatedly driving past your property in the middle of the night. Combined with the destroyed corn, we have a pattern." The sheriff's department took it more seriously once they saw the footage. Detective Sarah Wu called me that afternoon. "Mr. Olson, we would like to talk to Miss Kendall about the damage to your property. The repeated drive-bys combined with the timing is suspicious." "Do you have any other evidence?" "Just what I sent you," I said. "But she has been harassing me for months. My lawyer has all the documentation." Detective Wu spoke with Tom, reviewed all the HOA complaints, all the court documents, and everything else. 2 days later, she called me back. "We have interviewed Miss Kendall. She denies driving past your house, but we have traffic camera footage from the main road that shows her vehicle. She denies damaging your property, but we found corn debris in her tire treads. We are charging her with criminal mischief and harassment." I was surprised it had escalated that far. "Will she be arrested?" "She has been issued a summons to appear in court. If convicted, she could face fines and possibly jail time, though for a first offense it would likely be probation." A week later, Karen showed up at my door. She looked tired and stressed. "Mr. Olson, I need to talk to you," she said. "Can I come in?" "What is this about?" I asked, not opening the door fully. "Patricia is facing criminal charges. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and voted to remove her as president. I am the acting president now, and I want to resolve this situation." I let her in, and we sat at the kitchen table, the same place I had sat with Patricia months ago. "I want to apologize," Karen said. "I thought Patricia was right about the basketball court. She showed us documents, told us it was legal, said you were just being difficult. I did not do my own research. I should have." "You should have," I agreed. "The HOA is disbanding," Karen said. "Without Patricia, nobody wants to deal with it. We are filing paperwork to dissolve the organization. You will get a letter in a few weeks making it official." "Good," I said. "I am also here to ask you not to pursue a civil case against the HOA for damages. We do not have much money, and it would just come out of the pockets of neighbors who did not do anything wrong." I thought about it. "I do not want money from the HOA, I just want to be left alone," Karen nodded. "You will be, I promise. And for what it is worth, your corn looks great." After she left, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The HOA was gone. Patricia was facing consequences. My property was my property again, without anyone trying to claim authority over it. Patricia's court date was a month later. Tom and I attended, mostly to see how it would play out. Patricia showed up with a different lawyer, not the expensive one from before. She looked defeated. The prosecutor laid out the case. The destroyed corn, the footage of her driving past my house repeatedly in the middle of the night, the pattern of harassment documented by the civil courts. Patricia's lawyer tried to argue that she was under stress, that she had been trying to improve her community and had become overzealous. The judge was not sympathetic. "Miss Kendall, you took it upon yourself to build on someone else's property. When that did not work out, you engaged in harassment and property destruction. Your intentions are irrelevant. Your actions were illegal. Patricia was convicted of criminal mischief and harassment. She was sentenced to 6 months probation, 200 hours of community service, and ordered to pay restitution for the destroyed corn. The amount was small, maybe a few $100s, but it was the principle. As we left the courthouse, Patricia walked past me without making eye contact. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Karen had told me that Patricia's husband had filed for divorce. Apparently, the legal fees and the stress had been too much for their marriage. Patricia was moving out of the neighborhood. I did not feel good about it exactly. I had not wanted to ruin anyone's life. I had just wanted to be left alone on my own property. But she had made choices, and choices have consequences. The corn continued to grow. By mid-July, it was over 6 feet tall, healthy and green. I had not really planned what to do with it once it was ready. I was not a farmer. I did not have equipment to harvest it properly. But that was a problem for later. Mike Torres stopped by one afternoon with his teenage son. "Mr. Olson, my boy and I were wondering if you would mind if we helped you harvest that corn when it is ready. We have some experience and it seems a shame to let it go to waste." "I would appreciate that," I said. To be honest, I did not really think that far ahead when I planted it. Mike laughed. "I figured you were making a point." That I was. "Well, it is a hell of a crop. You must have done something right." The corn was ready to harvest in late September. Mike and his son came over with some equipment, and we spent a weekend bringing it all in. Some of it went to Mike for helping. Some I donated to a local food bank, and I kept some for myself. Where the basketball court had been, where Patricia had tried to claim authority over my property, there was now just turned earth and corn stubble. It was my land, and I had used it how I wanted. The HOA officially dissolved in October. I received a letter stating that the organization was no more, all covenants were void, and all property returned to individual ownership without restriction. It felt like closing a chapter. I saw Donald once, a few months later at the hardware store in Lawrence. He gave me a small nod and I nodded back. No words were exchanged. There was nothing left to say. I replanted the field the next spring, this time with wildflowers and native grasses. I wanted something that would just grow naturally, something beautiful that did not require much maintenance. By summer, it was full of color, attracting butterflies and bees. People driving past would sometimes slow down to look at it. I never heard from Patricia again. Karen mentioned once when I ran into her at the grocery store that Patricia had moved to a condo in Kansas City. "No HOA," she said with a wry smile. "How are you doing?" I asked Karen. "Good," she said. "Honestly, it is nice not having the HOA drama. I can just live my life now." "That is all I ever wanted," I said. "Living without an HOA has been peaceful. I maintain my property how I want. I plant what I want. I do not have to worry about getting a violation notice because my trash cans are visible from the street or my grass is the wrong height. The tractor sits in my barn, ready if I need it. Every time I see it, I think about that morning, plowing under the basketball court and planting corn. It was probably not the smartest thing I have ever done, but it was definitely the most satisfying. My property is my property. Nobody can build on it without permission. Nobody can tell me what to plant or how high to cut my grass. It is a simple principle, but one that Patricia and the HOA had forgotten. They learned it the hard way. The fields around my house change with the seasons now. Green in spring, golden in summer, brown in winter. It is mine, all mine, exactly as it should be. The basketball court is a memory, torn up and replaced with growing things. That is exactly how I wanted it to end.